Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. Up on the hazardous weather chart, we've got still a wind advisory out for the eastern Alaska range for that's out tonight through tomorrow night until 6 a.m. on Tuesday. That's for winds that will gust to 60 miles an hour or higher through the passes, and the peak of the strong winds will probably occur tomorrow afternoon, Monday afternoon, then slowly diminish thereafter, but the advisory remains out until 6 a.m. on Tuesday. Moving on to the fire danger chart, and not a lot on here, just 3 spots now of high fire danger, 3 small areas, one near or east of Tanana, this one in the greater Fairbanks area there, give or take, and then that one there right in the valley of the Copper River Basin, Copper River Valley area, about in that location, and that's really diminished from the last couple of days. And for the satellite imagery, see lots of clouds here left over from yesterday's system that came in. That's slowly pulling this to the west and northwest, and also shifting up to the northeast. Kind of a widespread area of light rain in that zone, tapering off down to the south here. And then the clouds, another batch of clouds here pushing rain up into the Yakutat area and locally into the northern panhandle this afternoon. Some few showers developing over the central areas, but sunshine temperatures in some areas into the 70s. Shelter Cove reaching 79 this afternoon, one of the warmer locations. Next storm down here, the cloud shield, pretty wide or pretty large cloud shield with that next system. See the low center just coming onto the chart there in the last frame. That's going to spread a lot more rain and wind will be coming up northward with that again this evening into Kodiak Island early in the evening throughout the night, and then eventually into the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula areas and northward by tomorrow morning. Out to the west, really not a lot going on at all. Just some cloudy skies with rather gusty winds, 35 miles an hour out of the north over the Pribilof Islands, and about 25 to 30 in gusts here across the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, less of a breeze up across St. Lawrence Island, with actually some clear skies showing up here over St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, and along the northwest coast with offshore flow, northeast winds going there. But high clouds over the western Arctic coast. Really not a bad day here. Some areas, patchy areas, low clouds and fog along the central and eastern coastal areas were improving during the afternoon. And kind of a cloudy, showery, not too many showers, really more mist than hit. ADAC had some light rain earlier today that's ended. Areas, low clouds and fog, generally cloudy skies out there. Not a lot of shower activity associated with this trough here. That weakening low, 996 millibars. And that trough, just scattered showers with that. More numerous showers up here over the southwest interior, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta there up toward the Nulato Hills, light rain up to the northeast there, then the sunshine back to the west. And some shower activity, mostly cloudy skies here along the Alaska Range. South central Alaska, actually this afternoon moisture is pretty much ended up along the North Gulf Coast, Cordova into Prince William Sound, Seward, Seldovia, Homer, and even Kodiak, but it'll start up at any time here for Kodiak, and we'll move on up to the North Gulf Coast. This batch of moisture will start to diminish, but that will keep a chance of showers going into tonight for the northern panhandle. Fairly cloudy to the south with increasing clearing as you head south and southeast. Lots of moisture here though, but rain becoming heavy at times, moderate to heavy at times here for the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast to about, say, Cordova or so. And windy conditions, possible gale force winds tonight with that ahead of the front. Drier central interior. This area of moisture today will shift up to the northeast now and diminish into just some shower activity there. Risk of a flurry or two, some fog eastern Arctic coast, otherwise not too bad to the west. And the Seward Peninsula dry. Unsettled here over the southeast Bering and Bristol Bay. A couple of troughs there, that dissipating low keeping the shower threat going. And still be a little breezy with those northerly winds for the Pribilof, so we'll get on down toward the eastern Aleutians, nothing too terribly strong, and high pressure controlling the western Bering and Aleutians there with light winds, low clouds, areas of fog, weak disturbance with some showers right through here really not very significant at all. That will drop southward though and kind of link up with another one coming down from the north. So that'll kick the shower or light rain, fog, and drizzle up. Not the winds though for the Pribilof Island areas. Otherwise, low pressure moves northward there into the Kuskokwim Delta during the afternoon hours. Not all that strong, about 998 millibars. Rain and fog pretty widespread here down over Togiak Bay, Bristol Bay, and the Alaska Peninsula, but it'll be on the light side, and winds will be light, and the heaviest rain will be in advance of this front here early in the day for the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, but then when that front moves through, that'll lighten up, become a little more showery, and the heavier rain will shift eastward, and the whole thing, though, will begin to diminish in intensity even into the afternoon, but a good shot of rain will be eventually moving into Yakutat. Otherwise, mostly sunny, partly to mostly for the Panhandle. Probably staying mostly cloudy out along the coast, low clouds and fog persisting, and showers up here pretty scattered. Brooks Range to very widely or isolated there over the upper Yukon Valley into the White Mountains, and maybe some rain showing up on the central Alaska Range in the afternoon. But again, those wind advisories, gusts 60 miles an hour or more, or above 60 there for the afternoon through the passes of the central and eastern Alaska Range, Delta Junction. Otherwise, lighter winds for sure here back over the northwest. And then for Tuesday, that front kind of rapidly dissipates there. You can see just leaving a few scattered showers behind around Yakutat. Looks really nice over the Panhandle. Optimistically say mostly sunny. Even along the central and south coast could see a fair amount of sunshine and dry with mild temperatures. Rain continues here at Kodiak Island. This front much weaker than the one coming through this evening, but still chance of rain for Kodiak. Light rain up the southern side of the Kenai Peninsula into western Prince William Sound. Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley back out to the Yukon Delta, and more low clouds, rain and fog and drizzle here from the Pribilofs down to the Alaska Peninsula, and a band of rain once again moving northwestward here into the northwest part of the state. By afternoon, we'll be into the Selawik Valley, Kotzebue Sound, Seward Peninsula area, back out to the eastern Arctic coast. And for the lows for tonight, lower 40s for the Aleutians, Pribilofs right up to St. Lawrence Island, and otherwise upper 40s here over the southwest interior, lower 50s south central Alaska, lower 50s to mid 50s there in the Panhandle, and lower 50s eastern interior, with upper 20s, lower 30s for the Arctic coast. Highs tomorrow, 70 to 75 here, or 6 or 7 over the eastern interior, back into the central Tanana Valley, and 70s pretty widespread and pushing northward there over the southern, or over the Panhandle. And then for the lows the next night, mid or 50s for the southeast coast, mid 50s for the Yukon Valley, otherwise 40s, and upper 20s along the Arctic coast, 75 to 80 over toward Eagle, otherwise in the 70s, and 70s over the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, starting up on the Arctic coast, marginal VFR tomorrow morning along the coastline, some IFR getting very close there to Prudhoe Bay and the eastern side there. But interior not too bad, some IFR along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Lots of IFR here, Kodiak Island, Gulf of Alaska, right up into the northern Panhandle, and then down along the coast, VFR over toward the border. Bering Sea, southern areas, well, central Aleutians, IFR. That slides right on up, just catching the Pribilofs here, but not quite making it to the southwest coast. And then for the afternoon, that IFR over the mountains here becomes marginal in the afternoon, extending from Norton Sound all the way down across Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, marginal VFR, same thing for the peninsula and much of the Aleutians. IFR still socked in Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, and hanging strong along the coast of the Panhandle, but as you can see, less marginal VFR over the inside waters. Interior here, except for the marginal VFR with that southerly flow on the upslope areas of the Alaska Range. Interior looking pretty good, Tanana Valley. And then same pattern up there for the Brooks Range, southerly flow, upslope flow there, making for some marginal VFR, then back into the VFR for the North Slope. And for Tuesday morning, IFR along the Arctic coast and the eastern North Slope. VFR holding here, central eastern interior from the Alaska Range south, marginal VFR and IFR, especially along the North Gulf Coast, Gulf of Alaska, and again hanging right along the coast of the Panhandle, otherwise marginal VFR. And then for the afternoon, mostly VFR across the southeast coast. Marginal now along the coast, IFR dissipating, but still around, especially Cape Yakataga to Cordova, northeast Prince William Sound. Marginal stuff into the Wrangell Mountains, and then much of the central eastern Alaska range and interior back to the west, good VFR. Marginal VFR, Seward Peninsula up across the Brooks Range. Some VFR for the North Slope. IFR, narrow band here along the coast. Becomes a little more widespread as you get down toward the Aleutians, and also some more pushing in out west. And for passes, marginal VFR for both Anatuvik and Adigan, while Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, that south-southeasterly flow. So lowest conditions here, IFR possible on both eastern approaches, and rainy, same forecast, marginal VFR, IFR possible, eastern entrance. And for windy, marginal VFR, becoming VFR out that northern entrance into the Tanana Valley. And for Isabel, marginal. Mentasta occasionally marginal, better conditions on the north entrance. And Tanita, marginal VFR at times. And for Portage, IFR, again, eastern entrance, otherwise marginal to IFR. And for Chilkoot and White, starting out IFR early, and then for the remainder of the day, looks mostly kind of marginal. And for the freezing levels here, about 8,000 feet out over the far western Aleutians, slopes down to around 6,000 through here get in toward Nikolsky or just to the west there. And about 6,000 feet here, eastern Aleutians on up, 2,000 to 4,000 feet Arctic coast. Then warming here with upper level ridge trying to build. We got 12,000 feet now in over the southern half of the southeast coast. Icing, south to north flow, lots of moisture coming up. So a pretty widespread area of light to isolated moderate rime icing. Above 10,000 feet though here for the North Gulf Coast, about 6,000 feet back here to the west, and some slipping on up to the eastern Brooks Range Arctic coast area above about 4,000 feet. And the jet stream, upper level low here off the southwest coast, another one down in through here, jet south of that, but this ridge building around the Queen Charlotte Islands turns the flow southerly. So you can see south flow up to 120 knots cutting in toward Yakutat and about 70 knots over southern and southeast or south central Alaska. That's going to pull all that moisture northward. Really shows up here at 9,000 feet. 35 to 50 knot winds along the coast there. Falling back though, Alaska range 30 to 35, much lighter up to the north, and winds 25 to 35, maybe up to 40 across the Fox Islands. And then for the 3,000 feet, pretty light here over the southern panhandle, picking up though 40 to 45 coming up to the North Gulf Coast, 25 to 35 here across the southwest interior. Light and variable over the north and northwesterlies at about 20 to 25 or 30 knots there, diminishing out toward the western Aleutians. Turbulence with those northerly winds, maybe some light to isolated moderate chop there for the Adak area. Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, right up into the eastern interior. Looks pretty bumpy tomorrow.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining me once again is Eric Stevens from the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, or GINA, based at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Eric, welcome back to the show.
Well, Dave, it's great to be back. Thanks for inviting us again.
Sure thing. And today we want to talk about identifying burn scars. That would be the burned up area after a wildfire when the flames and the smoke are gone. We can see it if you drive by it on the roadway, of course, but from satellite, we can also identify those places on the land, right?
You know it. You know that expression, ouch, that's going to leave a mark?
Yeah.
After you bang your knee getting out of the car. You go,
oh, yeah.
Well, the ouch, it's going to leave a mark, that also applies to the landscape. Whenever a wildfire ravages through, it's going to leave a mark on the landscape. After a wildfire burns out, this is called a burn scar.
Okay.
And you can ask yourself, well, that's interesting. We can see a burn scar from space. Right. Then the question is, well, why does that matter?
Okay.
Who cares?
Yeah, fire's over.
Right, the fire is over. We don't need to worry about this anymore. It turns out you kind of do, because burn scars are important. There's this old rule of thumb in the weather business that flood follows fire.
Okay.
The action of the fire in killing off the vegetation, in baking, kiln drying the landscape a little bit, can hinder the land's ability to absorb rainfall. So if you have a fire, especially if it's in complex mountainous terrain.
Right.
This is classic in California. It can happen somewhat in Alaska too. You get a wildfire in steep hilly or mountainous terrain, rips off all the vegetation off the landscape. Then 6 months later, there's a big rainstorm, and you get a flash flood in that area. So flood can follow fire. That's why you got to know where the burn scars are. Secondly, a fire needs fuel to maintain itself. So if there's an old burn scar left over from a year or two ago, and then another summer later here in Alaska in the interior, it's a big wildfire season, if there's a fire advancing toward an old burn scar, well, guess what? That old burn scar is going to be tougher terrain for that new fire to get through because there's not as much fuel in that burn scar. So they almost act like a natural fire break. These are a couple of reasons why you need to know where those burn scars are. Alaska Fire Service has limited resources. They want to put their people and their equipment where it does the most good. They need to know, well, this is an area where there's no burn scar. We better put people here because that fire could really run.
So really important for weather forecasters and fire weather forecasters for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But then how do weather satellites actually detect those burn scars?
Ah, good question.
Thanks.
Well, let's turn the Wayback Machine to the summer of 2015. That was a very active year. Got a picture here taken up in the White Mountains. This is one of the fires in progress that summer, and if you look real close, you can almost see Frodo throwing the ring into the volcano there. So that's quite the vision. Well, let's look at a visible image. Here we are in Alaska's interior. This is before the fires got out of the cage in early summer of 2015. Let's zoom into the western interior here. Again, this is a weather satellite image of visible light, what the human eye can see. We're into the middle reach of the Yukon Valley there in the western interior, Galena area. And this is just a beautiful visible day. Nothing much going on. It's in early June before the fires really got active. But then in 2015, the fires got loose, especially in that western interior. Here's another image. The same satellite pass as that visible image, but now we're not quite looking at visible light.
Very different.
There's a slight change here. This image incorporates something called the veggie band. 0.86 micron wavelength. The micron's very tiny, but that wavelength responds to vegetation, the chlorophyll. So trees and grasses reflect that part of the electromagnetic spectrum back to the satellite. And so the satellite sees that. When signal comes at that wavelength to the satellite, we know, there's some vegetation growing there. This is great. You can identify coastlines so easily because you go from vegetation to water. Turns out if you have a burn scar, guess what? You burned away the vegetation, so that's going to show up. We're going to do a before, during, and after kind of look here. And so we're looking at before. So in this image, we got a lot of green out there. That's wonderful. Another fun thing about this kind of imagery is you can see down in the Alaska Range in the southeast corner of the image, it's blue. That's glaciers and snow in the mountains. So this is not really what the human eye can see. This is these wavelengths are beyond human vision, but we've made them look certain colors. So the vegetation looks green. Now let's look at that same kind of satellite recipe, but during the fires. This is in July. The fires are loose. You can see the smoke in the middle of the image, the smearing look of the smoke, and then we can see some clouds that are white. Icy clouds are blue. So this is in July of 2015. The fires are doing their thing. We're burning up millions of acres. Now let's go to September. The fires are out. The audience has left the theater. You know, the event's over, right? We're done. But guess what? Now look at those brown patches.
Look at that.
All of those places are where the fire has burned away the vegetation. So you can see where the fires were. You can add up these perimeters, get acreage burned and such. And so that's good to know. Now remember, flood follows fire, and these are also natural fire breaks. So you need to know where these guys are. In the course of the 2015 summer season, we went from before with not much burn scar in this area to just a couple months later, we can see so much burn scarring on the landscape. What's interesting too about the satellite and looking at burn scars is you realize that burn scars are the gift that keeps on giving. You can forget that a couple of years ago maybe there was a fire in a certain area, but the satellite won't forget. So in the summertime we get wildfires in Alaska, but guess what? In the visible imagery here we can see the burn scars just a little bit, but they're not as prominent as in that veggie band. But then you can't see them at all if you cover them up with snow, right?
Exactly.
So here's an image from the middle of the winter time, and snow on the ground by this recipe looks blue. Again, these are wavelengths of light that the human eye can't really see. We're getting up into the infrared, near infrared, and the way we've assigned colors is if there's snow on the ground or there's a glacier, it looks blue, kind of intuitive. So this is early April of the following year, 2016. We're just about to get into breakup. We got a lot of snow on the ground, and now it's all going to melt. And as the snow melts, Then you get our final image here. Doesn't this look familiar? This looks like a lot of what we saw in September of the previous summer. So this is the spring of the next year. The fires themselves might not have overwintered, they're gone, but the fire scar does. And as the snow melts away, and then you have breakup, and then you have green up, whenever the leaves come out, the grass comes back, except in the burned areas, they're having a tough time because everything got burned off the previous year. So you can see these scars even the next summer, multiple years. It depends on what kind of vegetation there is. You know, some of the tussocky tundra grasses, they'll grow back really quick, but to get a forest to come back, that'll take much longer. So these burn scars, eventually the landscape will fill in the burn scar. It will heal itself, if you want to use that metaphor. But for the next few years, you can still keep track of these on satellite. And again, the reason we want to do that is that the burn scar can facilitate a flood, and it can act like a fire break. So there you are, the
Fascinating tools. So if you're a weather satellite and you're looking at my bowl of vegetables here, you might be able to pick out which one's the pea, which one's the tomato, and which one's the carrot, and apply that information precisely to whatever it is you're working on there. That is really fascinating stuff, that we have that capability from so high above the planet Earth, and Alaska for that matter.
Yep, eat your veggies.
Yes, definitely. I think I will. I'm hungry. Thanks so much for joining us again, Eric, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you right here next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis completed Sunday afternoon. Not much change from what it looked like yesterday. All ice free out here now over the Chukchi Sea and the Kotzebue Sound, and a narrow area up there to the north, but not a lot of change, or there will be no big changes at all except for the usual slow summer thaw over the next 5 or 6 days. Coastal water forecast here for the Panhandle, strongest on the north coast, south 20 to 30 knots. In fact, gales on the extreme eastern North Gulf Coast areas. Lynn Canal south at 20 tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, Stevens Passage south at 10, northwest 20 for Clarence Strait. Northwest 10 to 15 on the south coast. Tuesday, northwest 15 to 20 there for the south coast. South 15 turns southeast 20 on extreme north coast. Lynn Canal, no change south at 20, and no change also for Stevens Passage, but small craft advisory now for Clarence Strait with those northwest winds just getting over the threshold there at 25 knots. Big wind for Prince William Sound tomorrow, east 40 knots, 10-foot seas, southeast 40 for the North Gulf Coast, otherwise 35 knots for the western North Gulf Coast, 16-foot seas through here, and for the Barren Islands, southeast 30 with 16-foot seas, easterlies at 30 for Kamishak Bay with 10-foot seas, and northeast 25, southern Cook Inlet, northeast 20, northern Cook Inlet. Those will drop off to about 10 knots north of the Forelands on Tuesday, otherwise southeast 20, and then 25 knots for Kamishak Bay, 20 knots for the Barrens, all out of the southeast. Light southeast winds of 15 here for the North Gulf Coast, and winds coming down considerably, northeast at 10 with 2-foot seas for Prince William Sound. Shelikof Strait tomorrow for Monday, south 15, but small craft advisories there on the east side Kodiak Island. Sitkinak to Castle Cape, small craft advisory, southwest 25, 13-foot seas. Southwest 20 knots on down to Cape Sarachev out of the southwest at 20 knots with 10-foot seas. West 20 on the north side of the peninsula, and Bristol Bay northwest of 15. Southeast 20 for Bristol Bay on Tuesday. Southwest 20 for the Alaska Peninsula. South 15 there southwest of Sitkinak, and up the east side of Kodiak. Light southerly winds at about 15 and a easterly breeze there for Shelikof Strait. Fox Islands, northwest 20 to 25 with the 25-knot winds across to Unalaska Island. And Central Aleutians, westerlies 20 to 25 knots, 7 to 8-foot seas, and 15 to 20-knot winds for the western Aleutians. And then for Tuesday, west winds 15 for the western Aleutians and about 20 knots for the central areas. Oh, gosh. And west winds 15 to 20 knots for the Fox Islands. Pretty uniform wind pattern here from Adak on over to Unalaska Island. Southwest coast, northwest at 10 there, south of Nunivak Island. Otherwise, 20 knots out of the north all the way up to St. Lawrence Island with 4 to 5-foot seas. Perlofts, northwest 25, staying a little breezy there like you saw today with 7-foot seas, north 20 with 6-foot seas. And then for Tuesday, north 25 for St. Matthew Island, small craft advisories, northwest 25 continue for the Pribilofs, southeast 20, south of Nunivak Island, north 25, pretty brisk. Small craft advisories from there right up across St. Lawrence Island with 30-knot winds. And for the Beaufort Sea coast, central and east side kind of variable through here, more predominantly northeast, but staying light all the way to Demarcation Point, north 15 on the west coast. Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, northeast 25 knots, Cape Thompson to Wales, north 20. And for Tuesday, small craft advisories here, Bering Strait on up to Cape Beaufort, north-northeast, 25 to 30 knots, 6 to 7-foot seas, northeast 20 there, mostly south or near and south of Spencer Cape, and then up to the central coast north at 10, and northerlies at about 10 knots for the entire eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. And for tonight, that area of rain here over the northwest dissipates along that trough and shifts up there to the Brooks Range and tapers off here over the Kobuk and Selwick Valley areas, just showers. Wind and rain with this system rolling northward this evening from Kodiak into the North Gulf Coast, stays dry over the Panhandle and settle over the southeast Bering. And that low moves into the Kuskokwim Delta tomorrow with rain and wind as that front pushes eastward. Conditions will improve gradually behind the front. Wind advisory, Alaska range gusts 60 miles an hour through tomorrow night with the strongest winds tomorrow afternoon gusting over 60 miles an hour. And sunny and warm over the Panhandle on Tuesday. Band of rain here in the north and northwest. More rain with a weaker front moving into the southwest.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.